The massive chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with activity as representatives from over 300 species gathered for an emergency session. The holographic displays in the center of the room showed a small fleet of ships, barely visible against the backdrop of space. Admiral Wells stood before the Earth delegation's pod, his weathered face calm despite the mockery being directed at the human ships displayed above. The lead council member, a towering being called High Commander Stone, leaned forward in his seat, mandibles clicking in what humans had learned was their equivalent of laughter. "These are your warships," Stone's translator conveyed his amusement perfectly. "They look like escape pods compared to even our smallest vessels." The chamber filled with various sounds of alien amusement, from clicks to rumbles to high-pitched whistles. The human ships indeed appeared tiny next to the standard council vessels. Where council ships stretched for miles, human vessels barely reached a quarter of that length. Their sleek, dark hulls and minimal profile made them look even smaller. "We find our designs quite adequate," Wells replied, maintaining his diplomatic composure. Behind him, Captain Rogers of the Earth Defense Force gripped the railing of their pod, knuckles white with restraint. High Commander Stone gestured to the tactical display. "Your largest vessel would fit in our primary cargo hold. How do you expect to defend your territory with such limited capabilities?" More laughter rippled through the chamber. A military advisor from the Bright Star Empire, Commander Light, stepped forward. His crystalline form sparkled under the chamber's lights as he pointed to various sections of the human ships. "Their weapon ports are practically non-existent. Sensors detect minimal power signatures. These vessels pose no threat to established military forces." Wells shared a quick glance with Rogers. They had expected this reaction, had prepared for it. Earth's strategy relied on it. "We request formal recognition of Earth's territory and trading rights," Wells continued, ignoring the dismissive comments. "We have met all requirements for a spacefaring civilization." "Granted," Stone declared with a wave of his massive hand. "Though we suggest you remain within your current borders. The galaxy can be dangerous for developing species." The threat in his words was barely veiled. As the human delegation left the chamber, Rogers finally spoke. "They don't understand, do they, sir?" Wells allowed himself a small smile. "No, they don't. And that's exactly what we wanted." Back on the human flagship, Silent Thunder, Wells reviewed the meeting recordings with his command staff. The ship, despite its tiny size, housed technology that would have made the Council's military advisors choke on their own laughter. "They saw exactly what we wanted them to see," Technical Director Miller explained, pulling up the real specs of their ships. "Our quantum compression fields make our vessels appear smaller than they are. The power dampeners hide our true capabilities." The room's screens showed the reality of human engineering. Each small ship contained enough firepower to match 3 council vessels of similar size. Their advanced AI systems could process combat data faster than any known species. The compression technology allowed for unprecedented maneuverability, while their energy management systems could redirect power faster than their enemies could target them. "How long before they figure it out?" someone asked. Wells looked at the tactical display, watching as their fleet moved into defensive positions around Earth's territory. "They won't. Not until they have to." In the following days, Council ships began testing Earth's borders, performing routine patrols that strayed suspiciously close to human space. Each time, the tiny human ships would appear, maintain their position, and simply observe. The Council commanders reported back about the amusing little vessels that seemed to think they could guard their territory. What they didn't report were the strange energy readings their sensors occasionally picked up, or how the human ships sometimes seemed to flicker, as if they weren't quite what they appeared to be. Those details were dismissed as sensor glitches or atmospheric interference. As Wells watched another Council patrol pass by, he thought about how history had taught humanity a crucial lesson. Being underestimated was often the greatest advantage one could have. The Council would learn this lesson too, though not in the way they expected. The stage was set. Earth's fleet was ready. And soon, very soon, the galaxy would understand why humans had a saying. Good things come in small packages. In the depths of Council Intelligence Headquarters, Analyst First Class Gray stared at his screens with growing concern. The data patterns made no sense. Human ships were moving in formations that seemed random at first glance, but something about them nagged at his instincts. "Director," Gray called out, "you need to see this." He pulled up a three-dimensional map showing human fleet movements over the past month. Director Black floated over in her gravity chair, her four eyes narrowing at the display. "What am I looking at, Analyst?" "Human ship movements, but..." Gray highlighted several patterns. "They're not moving like a defensive fleet. These patterns suggest they're running combat drills, but at a scale that shouldn't be possible with their number of ships." The director's skin shifted to a darker shade of blue, a sign of deep thought among her species. "Explain." Here, Gray pointed to a cluster of movements. "This suggests at least 300 ships coordinating in perfect formation. But our scans only show 100 ships in that sector." And here, he highlighted another area. "Energy readings that appear and disappear instantly, far more powerful than their ships should be capable of producing." In another part of Council space, Commander Stone reviewed the latest diplomatic reports with growing frustration. Every attempt to open communication channels with Earth had been met with polite but firm delays. The humans cited technical difficulties and administrative reorganization. "They're stalling," Stone growled to his advisory board. "But why?" A junior officer nervously stepped forward. "Sir, we've detected increased industrial activity in human space. Their mining operations have tripled in the past week alone." Stone dismissed this with a wave. "They're probably building more of their toy ships. Let them waste resources." But the data kept coming. Reports from border colonies spoke of strange phenomena. Ship sensors would suddenly go dark for microseconds. Energy readings would spike and vanish. Some claimed to see human vessels that seemed to shift and distort, appearing larger for brief moments before returning to their known size. In a secure facility on Mars, Technical Director Miller supervised the final phase of Operation Reveal. Rows of seemingly small ships stretched into the distance, each one humming with contained power. "Quantum compression fields are stable," her assistant reported. "Power signatures are masked to 99.9% efficiency." Miller nodded, watching as engineers made final adjustments to what appeared to be a modest fleet. Only those with clearance knew that each ship contained enough compressed space to house weapons that would make Council military leaders lose sleep. "Status report on the AI integration," she asked. "The networked combat systems are operating beyond expectations. The simulation runs show our ships can coordinate maneuvers that the Council considers physically impossible." Back in Council space, an emergency meeting was called. Representatives from border worlds brought increasingly disturbing reports. "The humans are up to something," one delegate insisted. "My world's long-range sensors detected gravitational anomalies around their ships that shouldn't exist." "Their mining operations make no sense," another added. "They're extracting enough materials to build a fleet 10 times their current size, but we're not seeing any new ships." Commander Stone listened but remained unconvinced. "You're all jumping at shadows. Their ships are primitive, their technology limited. What could they possibly be hiding?" In that moment, alarms blared across the chamber. A border colony was under attack, not by humans, but by raiders from the Crimson Nebula, pirates who preyed on weaker worlds. "Perfect," Stone declared. "Now we'll see how these humans handle a real threat. Send observers, but do not interfere. Let them learn their lesson about inadequate defenses." As the Council watched and waited, expecting to see the humans' tiny fleet crushed, no one noticed the subtle smile on the Earth ambassador's face as he quietly left the chamber. In human space, Admiral Wells received the alert about the pirate attack. He opened a secure channel to all fleet commanders. "Operation Revealed is now active," he announced. "Remember your training. Remember why we let them think we were weak. And remember, We only need to reveal enough to make our point, not everything. Across human space, ships began powering up systems that had lain dormant for months. The storm was about to break, and the galaxy was not ready for what was coming. The Crimson Nebula Raiders approached the human colony with absolute confidence. Their fleet of 30 massive warships dwarfed the 6 human vessels that moved to intercept them. The Raiders' leader, Captain Red, watched through his command viewport with amusement. "Look at these tiny defenders," he broadcasted to his fleet. "This will be the easiest raid of the cycle. Remember, disable their ships, but leave enough survivors to tell others of our power." The human ships held their position, seemingly frozen in space. The Raiders' sensors showed no power spikes, no weapon charging, nothing to indicate these small vessels were combat-ready. "Their ships are so small, I might accidentally swallow one in my morning drink," Red joked, causing his bridge crew to roar with laughter. That laughter died instantly when the first human ship moved. One moment, the human vessel was a distant speck. The next, it was directly alongside Red's flagship, appearing to phase through space itself. Before anyone could react, the tiny ship's hull seemed to ripple and expand. "Impossible," Red's tactical officer shouted. "Their power readings just jumped by a factor of 1,000. The human ship's outer hull peeled back like a blooming flower, revealing weapon ports that shouldn't have fit in a vessel that size. Energy beams lanced out, cutting through the flagship's shields as if they were vapor. "How?" Red demanded, watching his supposedly superior shields fail. "Their weapons couldn't possibly." His words cut off as his ship's power grid collapsed. Through the viewport, he watched in horror as the other 5 human vessels engaged his fleet. They moved in ways that defied physics, their hulls shifting between sizes as quantum compression fields fluctuated in combat mode. Inside the lead human ship, Thunder's Edge, Commander West maintained a calm demeanor as his crew executed their practiced maneuvers. "Target their weapons and engines only," he ordered. "Let's show them what human engineering can do." The Raiders' massive ships tried to bring their weapons to bear, but the human vessels were too quick, too unpredictable. Where Raiders expected small targets, they found ships that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, their true size revealed in combat. "Sir," West's tactical officer reported, "the enemy is attempting to coordinate a response. Permission to demonstrate our eye-targeting systems." West nodded. "Approved. Show them why size isn't everything." The human ship's eye networks activated fully. In perfect synchronization, all 6 vessels fired precisely calculated shots that disabled 20 Raider ships in under 3 seconds. The remaining ships, including Red's flagship, found themselves trapped in a web of overlapping fields that rendered their weapons useless. "This is Commander West of the Earth Defense Force." West's transmission cut through the Raiders' comm channels. "Your ships are disabled. Surrender, and we will show mercy." From his powerless bridge, Red stared at the sensor readings that showed the true nature of the human vessels. Each tiny ship contained compressed space that housed weapon systems more advanced than anything in known space. Their maneuverability made standard tactical doctrine obsolete. We surrender," Red managed to say. As Council observers watched from a safe distance, their reports became increasingly frantic. None of their military analysts could explain what they were seeing. The human ships seemed to defy the laws of physics, their true capabilities finally revealed. The battle was over in less than 10 minutes. 30 Raider ships, each one vastly larger than their opponents, floated powerless in space. Not one had been destroyed, but all had been systematically and efficiently disabled. Commander West opened a channel to the watching Council vessels. "We trust this demonstration was educational. Please inform your leadership that Earth is always happy to discuss technology sharing between equals." In the Council's Emergency Command Center, the recordings of the battle caused chaos. Military experts argued over the implications, strategic analysts redrew threat assessments, and Commander Stone sat in silence, watching the footage of the tiny human ships transforming in battle, finally understanding how badly they had underestimated humanity. The age of assuming bigger meant better had just ended. The galaxy would never be the same. The Council's Advanced Technology Division worked through 3 straight cycles, analyzing the battle footage. Chief Researcher White hadn't slept since the data arrived, his eyes fixed on the holographic displays showing the human ship's transformations. "It's brilliant," he muttered, manipulating the 3D models with trembling hands. They didn't just make their ships small, they'd folded space itself. His assistant, Researcher Green, nodded in agreement. "Quantum compression technology. We theorized it was possible, but the power requirements were deemed too extreme." The holograms showed layers of compressed space within each human vessel. What appeared as a ship barely 200 meters long actually contained the equivalent of a kilometer of engineering packed into that space. Weapons, engines, and systems existed in a state of quantum superposition until needed. "That's why their energy signatures seem so low," Green continued. "They weren't hiding their power. They were storing it in compressed space, ready to deploy instantly." In Earth's primary shipyard orbiting Mars, Technical Director Miller led a delegation of stunned Council engineers through their facility. After the battle, Earth had agreed to demonstrate some of their basic technology as a show of good faith. "Each compression field generator," Miller explained, pointing to a device smaller than a cargo container, "can fold up to 10,000 cubic meters of space into a fraction of that volume. When powered up, it allows us to pack 3 ships' worth of equipment into one hull." One of the Council engineers, his environmental suit trembling slightly, raised a hand. "But the power requirements," Miller smiled, "are handled by our quantum reactor cores. Would you like to see one?" The engineers followed her into another chamber, where a sphere the size of a small car floated in a containment field. The energy readings from it made their instruments struggle to compute the output. "Impossible," one whispered. "A reactor that small couldn't power a ship 3 times its apparent size." Miller finished. "That's why we let everyone think we were primitive. Sometimes the best way to advance is to let others underestimate you." Meanwhile, in the Council's military headquarters, Commander Stone faced a barrage of questions from his superiors. "How did we miss this?" the High Commander demanded. "Their entire fleet is more powerful than we imagined." Stone's mandibles clicked nervously. "They showed us exactly what they wanted us to see. Their ships looked small because they chose to appear small. In reality," he brought up the new tactical assessments, "each tiny human vessel could match 3 Council ships of equivalent size. Their compressed space technology meant they could deploy more ships using fewer resources. Their advanced AI systems could coordinate complex maneuvers that larger ships couldn't match. And now," Stone concluded, "we have reports of other species requesting their technology. The balance of power is shifting." Across human space, shipyards that had appeared quiet now revealed their true nature. Quantum compression fields deactivated, showing vast fleets that had been hidden in plain sight. Each human defensive position suddenly contained 3 times the firepower previously detected. Admiral Wells stood on the bridge of the Silent Thunder, watching as his fleet revealed its true nature to the galaxy. Ships rippled and expanded, showing their actual capabilities for the first time since first contact. "Send word to all commands," he ordered. "No more hiding. It's time to show the galaxy who we really are." His communications officer smiled. "Already getting requests for diplomatic meetings, sir. Seems everyone wants to talk now that they know what we can do." Wells nodded, remembering the mockery at that first Council meeting. Amazing how perspective changes when you realize the tiny fleet you laughed at is actually one of the most advanced in known space. The quantum compression fields around the Silent Thunder fluctuated, briefly showing the true size of its internal spaces. Weapons that could have filled 3 normal ships, engines that bent space itself, and technology that had remained hidden until the perfect moment. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had never been primitive. They had simply been patient, waiting for the right time to show their true nature. And that time had finally come. The war started because of a simple miscalculation. After seeing humanity's true power, several council hardliners decided that such technology couldn't be allowed to spread. They launched a coordinated attack on human space, expecting to overwhelm Earth's forces through sheer numbers. They didn't expect humans to be ready for exactly this scenario. Admiral Wells stood in the Strategic Command Center on Mars, watching as red dots representing enemy fleets appeared across 7 star systems simultaneously. Around him, holographic displays showed hundreds of human ships moving into predetermined positions. "All fleet commanders report ready," his tactical officer announced. "Operation Checkmate is active." Wells nodded, his expression grim. "Begin the defense. Show them why you don't corner humans." In the Antares system, Commander Park watched as 30 Council dreadnoughts approached her seemingly small fleet of 15 ships. The enemy commander's transmission crackled through the bridge. "Surrender now, and we will be merciful," the Council commander demanded. Park's response was simple. She activated her fleet's quantum compression systems. Her ships rippled and expanded, weapon ports appearing where none had been visible before. The Council fleet's sensors suddenly registered power signatures that dwarfed their own. "All ships, execute Maneuver Phoenix," Park ordered. The human vessels moved in ways that the larger Council ships couldn't match. They split into 3 groups, their small size allowing them to weave between enemy formations. Advanced AI systems coordinated their attacks with microsecond precision. Similar scenes played out across all 7 systems. Council commanders found their massive ships outmaneuvered by vessels a third their size. The humans' quantum-compressed spaces allowed them to bring weapons to bear from impossible angles. In the Rigel sector, Captain Turner's fleet demonstrated why size wasn't everything. His 20 ships executed a maneuver that the Council had deemed physically impossible. They quantum shifted in perfect synchronization, appearing to phase through space itself. "Target their engines and weapons," Turner commanded. "Show them the difference between size and capability." The Council fleet's formation broke as human ships seemed to materialize inside their defensive screens. Compressed space expanded at precisely calculated moments, revealing weapon systems that shouldn't have fit in such small vessels. Back in the command center, Wells watched the battles unfold. "Status report. All 7 systems engaged, sir. Council forces are finding their traditional tactics useless against our maneuverability. Their ships can't target what they can't predict." The holographic displays told the story. Council ships, massive and powerful, struggled to engage opponents that could change position faster than their targeting computers could compensate for. The humans' smaller size, combined with their advanced technology, made them nearly impossible to hit. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "Council Command is requesting an immediate ceasefire." Wells studied the tactical display. In less than an hour, the human forces had effectively neutralized 7 attacking fleets without destroying a single enemy vessel. Their precise targeting and superior maneuverability had allowed them to disable rather than destroy. "Commence shutdown procedures," he ordered, "but maintain combat readiness." Across 7 star systems, human ships powered down their weapons but kept their quantum compression fields active. The Council fleets, many of them missing engines or weapons, drifted in space. Their commanders had learned a harsh lesson about judging capability by size alone. In the aftermath, Council analysts would study the battle recordings with a mixture of fear and admiration. The human ships had demonstrated coordination that should have been impossible, maneuvers that defied traditional space combat doctrine, and technology that changed the very nature of fleet warfare. A junior Council tactician perhaps said it best in his report. "We built our ships like mountains, thinking size meant power. The humans built their ships like lightning, compact, precise, and impossible to stop." The Battle of 7 Systems, as it came to be known, lasted less than 2 hours. Not a single ship was destroyed on either side, but the galaxy's balance of power had shifted permanently. The age of massive dreadnoughts was over. The era of human innovation had begun. The line of alien ships stretching outside Earth's primary shipyard seemed endless. Representatives from over 50 species waited patiently for their chance to learn from humanity's engineers. Just 6 months after the Battle of Seven Systems, the galaxy's perception of human technology had completely reversed. Inside the Mars Engineering Academy, Technical Director Miller addressed the first class of alien students. The lecture hall was filled with beings of all shapes and sizes, united by their eagerness to understand human innovation. The first principle of quantum compression, Miller explained, pointing to a holographic display, isn't about making things smaller. It's about understanding that space itself is more flexible than we once believed. In the front row, a council engineer raised all 4 of his hands. But our calculations always showed the power requirements would be impossible to manage. Miller smiled, adjusting the hologram to show the internal workings of a human quantum core. That's because you were thinking linearly. Watch what happens when you approach power distribution through quantum states instead. The alien engineers gasped as the demonstration showed energy flowing through compressed space, multiplying its efficiency by factors they had previously thought impossible. One student dropped their datapad in shock. Meanwhile, at the council's central shipyard, the transformation was already underway. Massive construction bays that once housed kilometer-long dreadnoughts were being retrofitted to produce smaller, more efficient vessels based on human designs. Tear it all down, Master Builder Brown instructed, watching as workers dismantled another enormous engine assembly. The future isn't about building bigger. It's about building smarter. The council's chief architect, studying the new designs, shook his head in wonder. We spent centuries making our ships larger, thinking it was the only way to house more technology. All this time, we could have been compressing space itself. Earth's diplomatic offices were equally busy. Admiral Wells found himself conducting 3 meetings simultaneously through quantum-linked communications, explaining human technology sharing policies to various species. No, we won't share weapons technology directly, he explained to one group. But we will teach you the principles of quantum engineering. What you build with that knowledge is up to you. In orbit around Jupiter, the first joint human-alien shipyard began operations. Ships of various designs moved through the construction phases, each incorporating some element of human innovation. Some focused on quantum compression, others on the advanced AI systems that allowed for precise coordination. Watch the power fluctuations on Bay 3. Technical Supervisor White called out to his mixed crew of humans and aliens. Remember, the compression field needs to be stable before you can layer the internal spaces. The alien workers, once skeptical of taking instructions from primitives, now hum on every word from their human teachers. They had seen the results of this technology in action, and none wanted to miss the revolution. In the Council's Strategic Planning Division, analysts worked to rewrite centuries of tactical doctrine. Traditional formations, designed for massive ships, proved useless against quantum-compressed vessels. New strategies had to be developed from scratch. Everything we knew about space combat is obsolete, Commander Stone admitted to his staff. The humans didn't just change the rules. They showed us we were playing the wrong game entirely. Back on Earth, in the original shipyard where it all began, Technical Director Miller stood with Admiral Wells, watching new vessels under construction. They're finally starting to understand, Miller observed, as a group of alien engineers excitedly discussed quantum field theory nearby. It was never about making ships small. It was about making space work for us instead of against us. Wells nodded, remembering the mockery at that first council meeting. Amazing how quickly attitudes change when you demonstrate superior technology. And we haven't even shown them everything yet, Miller added with a slight smile. The revolution wasn't just technological, it was philosophical. Species across the galaxy began to question other long-held assumptions. If they had been wrong about ship design for so long, what else had they misunderstood? The age of blind adherence to tradition was ending. A new era of innovation, led by human ingenuity, had begun. and the galaxy would never be the same. 1 year after the Battle of Seven Systems, the Galactic Council chamber looked very different. Where massive thrones had once dominated the space, now sat smaller, more efficient quantum-compressed seats that offered the same comfort in a fraction of the size. It was a subtle but powerful symbol of how much had changed. Admiral Wells stood at the podium, addressing representatives from over 500 species. The chamber that had once mocked Earth's tiny ships now listened in respectful silence. "The treaty before you today," Wells announced, "represents more than just peace. It represents a new understanding between our peoples. Size does not equal strength. Progress does not mean bigger. Innovation comes in all forms." In the shipyards across known space, the changes were even more dramatic. The enormous construction facilities that had once built city-sized vessels were being converted into multiple smaller bays, each capable of producing ships with quantum-compressed technology. Production efficiency up 400%, reported Technical Director Miller to the Joint Species Engineering Council. Energy consumption down 60%, and that's just the beginning. The alien engineers, once proud of their massive designs, now competed to create the most efficient use of compressed space. Teams from different species worked together, combining their unique perspectives with human innovation. At the Council Military Academy, Commander Stone taught a class of young officers from various species. The lesson displayed behind him showed the battle footage from 7 systems. "The humans didn't just beat us," Stone explained. "They showed us a better way. Today, we don't measure a fleet's strength by the size of its ships, but by the intelligence of its design." In Earth orbit, the first graduating class of the Interstellar Engineering Exchange Program watched as their prototype vessels demonstrated new applications of quantum technology. Ships no larger than shuttles carried the power of old dreadnoughts. Supply vessels used compressed space to transport unprecedented cargo volumes. "Each of you," Technical Supervisor White addressed the graduates, "represents the future. You've learned not just how to use our technology, but how to think differently about what's possible." The changes rippled through galactic society. Species that had once measured their worth by the size of their constructions began focusing on efficiency and innovation. Trade routes, once limited by massive ship requirements, expanded as smaller, more numerous vessels could access previously restricted spaces. In the Council's diplomatic wing, the peace treaty's final details were being arranged. Admiral Wells sat across from High Commander Stone, both leaders watching a holographic display of the new Joint Defense Fleet. "To think," Stone mused, his mandibles clicking softly, "we almost went to war because we couldn't see past our own assumptions." Wells nodded. "The best technology isn't always the biggest or most obvious. Sometimes, the most powerful innovations are the ones that make you question everything you thought you knew." Across human space, shipyards that had once hidden their true nature now operated openly, sharing knowledge with alien engineers who came to learn. The sight of different species working together, combining their unique perspectives with human innovation, had become common. "The real victory," Miller told a reporter, "wasn't proving our technology superior. It was showing the galaxy that progress comes from questioning traditional thinking." The final vote in the Council chamber was unanimous. The new treaty established not just peace, but a framework for ongoing technological cooperation. Earth would share its innovations, while other species would contribute their own unique insights. As Wells left the chamber, he passed the spot where, not so long ago, the Council had laughed at Earth's tiny fleet. Now that same Council had voted to remake their entire society based on human principles of efficiency and innovation. "Funny how things change," his aide commented. Wells smiled, watching as ships of all sizes and designs moved through the space lanes above the Council world. Some were traditional massive vessels, others were quantum-compressed human designs, and many were new hybrids combining multiple technologies. "They didn't just learn about our technology," Wells replied. "They learned to stop measuring strength by size alone." And that might be the most important lesson of all. The galaxy had entered a new age. Not an age of bigger ships or more powerful weapons, but an age of smarter design and collaborative innovation. And it all started because someone had mocked a tiny fleet.